Tell me about mountain biking.
How do you know about that? I love it, especially living in Duluth. So there's so many amazing trails around here, and I actually just pumped up my fat tire bikes. So
Are you, whoa,
ready
whoa,
to
whoa.
go.
It's like we're talking in December right now. Are you mountain biking right now in Duluth, Minnesota?
Yeah, absolutely. So
No way.
I got, studs on my fat tire and love it out here. There's so many amazing trails. So you got to be definitely, the temperature's got to be right. For
I
me,
bet.
it's got to be like 15 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. But yeah, there's some crazies out there that get out there when it's like minus 15. So that's not me, but I do love it.
How, like in season, like is it part of your routine?
For sure, and then in the summer, tried to do it more, so I have 6 bikes. So fat tire bikes, regular mountain bikes, gravel bikes, so I just love it. It's so much fun, and it's such a great way to stay mentally healthy and, you know, um, yeah,
So I live in like the mountain bike capital of the world
awesome.
in Squamish, BC.
Yes,
I don't own a mountain bike. My neighbor's household of 4, they've got 18 in their garage. And that would probably be pretty consistent on my blog.
that's awesome.
And so one of the reasons that and it looks like a ton of fun. One of the reasons I haven't sort of jumped in the deep end is because like my wife and I will go to like say a dinner party, and it doesn't matter what your background is. Like if you live in Squamish, you own a mountain bike unless you live in our house. And but you'll be at a dinner party, for example, and inevitably, like at some point in the evening, people start talking about mountain biking, and then the conversation turns to like, oh, like that time I like shattered my collarbone, or that time like I
Yeah.
couldn't work because my shoulder. Like everybody has
Oh, yeah.
a wipeout story. So I throw it to you. What's your like gnarliest
Yeah.
mountain bike injury?
Yeah. Well, I used to be a little bit, crazy, and, I
Like, does
tried to
Duluth put that in your contract? Like, like no jumps on the mountain bike?
No, but they should, no. Yeah, I used to try to do jumps and stuff, and one time I tried to clear a jump and, just didn't pump it when I hit the ground hard enough, and I went ass over tea kettle. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear here. Dislocated my shoulder, landed in a creek, and but the shoulder comes out a lot. So
When was this?
just a couple years ago. But so now I'm a little bit more hesitant. I kind of bypass some of the jumps, but I'll do smaller ones. But I'm not as crazy as I used to. But I remember sitting there lying in the creek, and I was just like, oh crap. My shoulders out. And some other bikers stopped and they were like, because they saw me go and they were just like, are you okay? And I was like, yep, I'll be okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. So it was, afterwards you can kind of laugh at it, but at the same time, yeah.
Well,
But
if
my
any,
bike was fine. And that's the most
thank
important
God, thank God. I was for that.
because you're in the middle of nowhere
They're
sometimes.
not. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, how much?
And it's going to take you twice as long to get out if your bike doesn't hold up. So yeah, it did. Thank goodness.
So, in preparation for this, just in going back and looking at some of your media availability from when you got promoted to the head coaching role, a word kept coming up, and that was community. And what you seem to reference as being special and unique about the Duluth community and the opportunity to play in your program had nothing to do with the on ice stuff. Can you elaborate on what
Yeah.
makes playing in Duluth special and what's special about that community?
There's so many amazing things. One, I just, Duluth is so unique in that you have the great outdoors surrounded by the university. And at the same time, it's like a medium sized city, so you still
Yeah.
have all the arts, music, entertainment. There's tons of concerts right here at our arena, Amsoil Arena. And when that's happening, we just head over next door and play over at the deck, practice over there until we get back. But, so many fun things happening from, a city perspective. But then at the same time, you got the beauty of the trails, in your backyard. Like I can literally hit the trails from my backyard. So it's such a unique combination. And the people here are just outstanding. I mean, they're so wonderful. Everyone is so nice. You know, they always say Minnesota nice, but it's true here. It really is. And people really, really buy into the programs here at UMD. You know, we don't have other professional sports teams in the areas.
Sure.
Yeah, so especially hockey, men's and women's hockey are the two Division One teams in the area. So the community really, really supports it. And I swear, our student athletes, I am the luckiest coach alive. They are such incredible um, individuals and incredible people. They do so much here in the community, and through them, I've really gotten to know even more amazing things about this incredible community. So I just feel so fortunate and privileged to be a part of it and to get this opportunity to be the head coach here at the University of Minnesota-Duluth.
It is a bit of a unique opportunity in that in your case, you've kind of come full circle. You were an assistant
Yeah.
coach under Shannon Miller. And I know that when she departed, you interviewed for the head coaching job, which ultimately went to Maura Crowell, who
Yes.
you ended up coming back and
Yeah.
being an associate coach under. And what strikes me about that is, I mean, it goes without saying, coaches, move jobs frequently. That's kind of goes with the territory. However, to come back to a program where you interviewed, you didn't get the job. It just says to me, in a world where, at the end, we're all human beings and human nature is you hold grudges. But to
Yeah.
come back and put that aside and just look at it, it would seem to me almost from a 30,000-foot view and say, like, this is a great opportunity. And that's all that can matter is that it's a great opportunity. And I'm going to come in here and dive in
Yeah.
and
Well,
be
and
my fair.
I look back at that and they ended up going with Moore Crawl, and what an amazing person they ended up hiring. And I feel so fortunate to have had the opportunity to come back here and continue to learn and grow from her. She's got to be one of the greatest culture people I have ever met of all times. And so I just learned so much from her and developed such a wonderful, friendship with her. So just feel so privileged that I got that opportunity to come back. We really, my spouse and I, we really wanted to get back to Minnesota. We loved it so much when we were here, and so sometimes things don't work out. But so happy in the end that it did work out. So got a developed another wonderful relationship with a friend of mine with Maura Kroll, learned a lot from her. And, now I'm back here as the head coach. So couldn't be more happier.
Well, and I think it's just it's such a great lesson, for me and our listeners that as you navigate, your coaching journey is to and maybe the way to look at it is to not hold things personally and just look at everything, and I think in your career is such a great example of when one door closes, another door opens, and that you just keep, keeping a positive mindset. When you've spoken of Maura, you talk about, obviously, her ability as a culture builder, specifically how everything is rooted in building personal relationships. Can you give an example of, when you're framing, whether it's, I don't know if it's your weekly schedule or your season, but how do you design to invest in personal relationships?
Yeah. Learned so many little things from her. She always made it rules like, when we're out as a team, coaches don't sit together, go sit with the players. You can learn so much from them when you're at the lunch table or at the dinner table, just chit chatting and, talking about everything kind of outside of what's happening, um, you know, within the hockey community and the hockey world. So there's just so many opportunities to learn. And so I definitely made that a staple in what I do each and every day. I'm constantly in the lunchroom versus sitting in my office having lunch. I'm sitting with the players and just interacting, not talking about hockey, but asking them about school, how their, day to day is going. And that's so important. But we also spend a ton of time here just doing one-on-ones meetings with our student athletes, and it has nothing to do, with hockey. It ends up, sometimes they always kind of want to talk about hockey,
Sure.
but for the most part, like it's just so important if you really want to get the best out of your student athletes, you really have to know who they are as people first. And so, that's an opportunity for us to find out how are things going, in their apartments, how are things going in school, what are they struggling with? How's their brothers and sisters doing? How's puppy that they haven't seen in so long? So all of that just means so much to them. And like every coach always says that, the more you know about who they are as people, the more you're gonna, continue to get more out of them. So
For sure. And with that being said, I can still feel like anytime you get called to the coach's office, it's kind of like getting called to the principal's office a little bit. How do you maybe disarm your players in those
yeah,
settings to say, hey, like this isn't a pass or fail thing. This is genuinely us getting to know each other. How do you sort of set the table to have a really productive conversation?
yeah, my door's always open, so I
Like
hardly ever
literally?
yeah, I hardly ever close it unless it is a conversation with a student athlete, and they maybe want to talk to me about something other,
Sure.
that might necessitate the door being closed. So but other than that, always make sure that it's open, and they always know that, if anything happens, they can always call me. I don't care what time of day it is. I know that their parents, obviously sending their kids away from school want to make sure that, their parents, they want to make sure that they know that you're there for them and that you care for their kids. So with that said, when you're recruiting them, I tell that to their parents all the time. If they need something, they know they can call me, and doesn't matter what day or, you know
Well,
night
like
or day it
can the
is. But
parents call you?
you know, they have
Yeah.
before in the past. Yeah, I'm definitely open to that, and usually it's if someone is struggling,
Sure.
or anything like that, not hockey related,
Totally.
you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, when the parents come, I think it's really important to engage with them and connect with them so that they also in turn feel valued. Um,
Absolutely.
and so that's really important. I don't think that you cut those ties off, kind of once the kid commits here. It's kind of a family affair. So
Well, I think in your situation too, it's unique in that unlike on the boys' side, most of your freshman players are literally like coming right out of high school, so they're 18
yes,
years old, and I mean the gap between 18 and 21 is, I think,
huge.
really significant, and two, your program has a long track record of attracting players from Europe, which again, you're dealing with an 18-year-old that's maybe in a different country, different continent. Like, I imagine those conversations and that open door policy, is especially important.
Yeah, so important. We recruit the best of the best, no matter where they're from. And some of our players are from overseas, and but even the ones that are right here in Minnesota, in our backyard. Again, I just think that's so important that their parents know that we're going to take care of their kids, and we're going to help them. I think hockey is one of the best learning laboratories there is in the world for learning life skills and how important that is. And there's so much growth that happens. And first and foremost, I think my players know, like, it's okay to make mistakes, whether they're on the ice or off the ice. It's okay to make mistakes, but we want to learn and grow from those mistakes. And be able to develop good coping mechanisms, so that we can, when we get knocked down, get back up, and be better, each and every time we do get knocked down, because we're going to get knocked down and we're going to make mistakes in life. But it's so important. I want those parents and our student athletes to know that we're there for them and we're going to help them as we go along.
So I think what you just said there in terms of the coping mechanisms is so important, because we hear coaches say a lot that it's okay for players to make mistakes, but obviously it's a competitive arena,
Yep.
and if Johnny or Sally keeps turning the puck over on the breakout, at some point you've got to learn from it. Can you maybe? But I think the coping mechanism, like that part, is sometimes maybe the missing ingredient. Can you give some examples of, let's say it's in game, a player does just that. They have a tendency to turn the puck over. You've addressed it. You've worked on it in practice. What would be that coping mechanism to maybe set them up to be successful their next shift out?
Yeah. Um, I think a lot of times it's important just to let them know that, hey, let's whatever, write that on a piece of paper, crinkle it up, and throw it in the garbage, right? It's done, it's over with. And now we have a whole new sheet. What are we going to do next?
Yeah,
That sort of mentality is so important. I think when our student athletes kind of hear that, they know you have their backs, and they're like, okay, like I'll never forget, like when I was growing up, I used to water ski, and I was getting frustrated every time I fell. And my brother kept telling me, if you're not falling, you're not trying, you know? And so that just resonated so much with me, and helped me to not be afraid to fail, because I know I've failed a lot going along. And so I just try to instill that in our players, like it's okay, And the best thing is that this is why we play the game in layers, So if one person messes up, the next person's there to have your back, and then the next person after that, and then we got the goalie back there, So it's okay, right? And mistake hockey's a game of mistakes. Oh my god, like whoever
yeah,
plays the game perfect? You watch an NHL game and there's mistakes happening all over, like they're not perfect either. So it's just so incredibly important that I think to for your student athletes to know that you believe in them and that it's okay. You just got to keep putting them back in the fire. So eventually the popcorn's gonna pop.
I love. Oh my god, I love that. Do you think it's something? I was thinking about this that especially in such an analytical world, right? Like where I think as coaches, we're given data and proof if something worked or didn't work, within a couple minutes of the game being over. But in terms of that mindset of creating an environment where players are allowed to make mistakes, they know they're allowed to learn from them, they know they're going to get put back out and get a second chance. Do you think that this is a case of something that's better measured over the course of the season? And what I mean by that it might not pay off initially, in game, but by the end of the season, your team as a whole is going to be that much better if you can really invest in that sort of
Yeah,
philosophy.
yeah, and 100%. And like my whole philosophy too around mistakes is, who cares if you make it? Just get it back. Like
Yeah,
that's like work ethic is so important to me, But and so if a kid makes a mistake, but as long as their intent and their drive is to get it back, then I'm going to keep playing them. But if it's not, and it's going against, what our values are as a team, then we might have to, take a step back. Um, and kind of that's when you have that conversation and bring that player back into your office to talk about maybe what you saw on the ice. And half the time when you ask those questions, something else is happening in their life. you know
yeah,
and you usually find out what's going on, right? Whether it's breakup or didn't do well on a test,
totally.
or what have you. So it's just I just think it's so important that as long as they have the mindset of, when they make mistake, just get it back, you know, um, then we're okay.
So I put myself in the shoes of one of your players. Okay, I take a lot of notes, so I took that back. That the intent and that I guess that light switch mentality of saying I lost it, but I it's gone, and I go get the puck back. If I come to your program, I've never played for Laura Schuler before. I've never heard that
Yep.
framed that way. That this is almost a skill that I could practice.
Yeah.
How do you create an environment where that
Yeah.
skill can be acquired in practice?
Reinforce it. We tape all of our practices, so that's so critically important. My assistant coaches too spend a ton of time doing one-on-one video work, as do I as well with our student athletes. But like, especially when you can highlight things like that in video, like game video, whether it's someone blocking a shot or someone might have lost possession, but then got it back, that resiliency, that sort of mentality, and you can highlight it. I think that just goes such a far way because you want to reinforce, the habits and the values that are going to lead to success. So that I think that's incredibly important. That is just as valuable as showing, why you were successful on a neutral zone forecheck. Those little intangibles are what's going to make your team great, I think.
So when you or your assistant coaches are reviewing video, is it a blend of game video and practice video, or would there maybe
Yeah.
be like a day where it's like, hey, today we're just doing practice video and then games
Yeah.
happens on a specific time?
Yeah. So if we're, I do a ton of video. So let's just say we are working on something specific in practice, whether it's our neutral zone forecheck. Then usually I like to, right before we go out, I might show one or two clips of something that I'm trying to emphasize. And that
Yeah.
I usually like to use NHL clips,
Yeah.
um, personally. And then after we practice it, right before we go back on the ice, I might show one or two clips of our players being successful, doing the exact same thing. So they see at the highest level, then they see them doing it.
Yeah.
And you reinforce like the little things that add up to whatever we're trying to do on the ice when it's successful. So I think that's really key. And then for our game footage, after every game, we always, have something that we're going to hone in on in order to continue to develop. So whether it's our offensive play, and maybe we want to just reiterate two good things that we saw in the D zone that we've been talking about all week long, like, one or two clips of us doing something successful. Now let's, look to the offensive zone and how are we going to generate more offense, and trying to show them where those opportunities, might be out there. So we do a lot of video with our students for sure. So,
But what's interesting is like what I'm hearing is it's a lot of video, but it's in bite-sized
oh yeah,
portions.
small, 2 or 3 clips.
Yeah, and then but I also think like, and I've been on the other side of that where you break a game down and you're for all the
There's
right
so
reasons
much
you want to
you
show
wanna
like
show.
all this stuff, but what I'm hearing from you is there seems to be almost like a theme for the week, or there's like, hey, we're really
Yes,
focusing on this part of our game. And while there might be a bunch of other clips on other aspects of the game that we could show, we're going to sort of piece this together and show
yep,
the NHL clips and to almost tell a story that hopefully
100%.
is going to result in maybe a week or whatever amount of time. It's really going to stick and become a habit versus something we
Yep,
set and forget it.
yep, yep, and there's so many things that you can break down, like, okay, so I say 2 or 3, but I always say, like, my max clips are 5, but like 5 on the same thing,
Yeah.
So whatever it might be, um, if you're looking at like how do you generate more offense, like what are 5 keys that help to generate offense, you could show one clip but focus in on 5 different things that help to generate that scoring opportunity for you, whether what it was being physical on the puck, whether it was getting inside the inner rim, whether it was getting your shot off or moving the puck across the royal road. Like you could show 5 different details that added up to success, and I think that's so important. Like I think you're going to get way more out of limiting clips, like in themes, and focusing in on all the variables that in that one particular thing that added up to something amazing. I think that goes a longer way than D zone, neutral zone, O zone, because they're not going to remember all of that. They're going to remember one thing. What is it that's most important for you guys to continue to um, narrow in on in order to be better. So sometimes for us, it's our D zone. A few weeks ago when we were playing it was we wanted to create more offense. So it was, one idea. You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
I think that's great advice. Um, video is, I mean, I just look at your career, like when you started, I'm guessing, you probably didn't have Exos or Steve or whatever program on your computer, but at some point you would have gotten introduced to video, which for anybody, I mean, it's like a blank canvas. It's infinite how much you can do with it, but more is not always better. Who might have been some influences or maybe perhaps some experiences that you've had where you've sort of refined how you deliver video and how you leverage it successfully?
Great question. Well, one, when Mel Davidson was kind of grooming me for the Olympic coach, I kind of had those 4 years and got the opportunity to work with different NHL coaches. And after the 2010 Olympics, I specifically got to sit down and work with Ken Hitchcock. And the way that he presented his video was, I just loved it. You know, like you said, there's kind of like almost a story behind it. And you can make video, uh, what's the word? Like you can basically mold it into whatever it is that you want to present, by finding, the best clips and all of that stuff and really be able to tell your story and make a point. But I learned a lot from him from just a small amount of time that I was able to sit with him over like a weekend. I think it was like 3 days, and
No way.
just learned so much. He ended up going through his whole Olympic playbook with a select few of some of the coaches that were within Hockey Canada. So
No kidding.
yeah, so that was really really cool, and and just through that experience with the national program, I got to work with some other NHL coaches and learn how they taught as well. Just very very Bill Peters, holy smokes, can he ever break down a neutral zone? But like, wow, so had that amazing opportunity to just learn from them how they presented video, how they got their point across. And it's something that, for me, I really took to and have since, obviously tried to continue to do that with everything that we do with our teaching here.
It would seem to me that you're someone that hasn't been shy about seeking out either mentorship or just new
Yeah.
opportunities to learn. I mean, I just think of the year you spent at Quinnipiac, for example, um, and I know that you've also had an opportunity to attend the Washington Capitals development camp. And what have maybe been some other impactful experiences that you've had, and if so, what stuck?
Yeah. Well, working with Peter Laviolette, that was unbelievable. That was so cool. One, just what an amazing person. Like, holy smokes. I'll never forget how he made me feel. And he was so welcoming, him and his staff. And any question that I had, he just gave me the time of day,
Yeah,
it was like, oh, there, check off this box. He really was like, let's sit down and talk. What are some of your
that's cool.
questions? And then if it was specific towards something, then he'd be like, all right, let's go sit down with this assistant coach because he does power play, one of the best in the league. So, let's talk to him and um, answer some of the questions that you may have. And so that was just a really, really cool experience. So grateful for just how welcoming his entire staff was, but learned a lot. And he was able to bring me back a few different times, and so to be able to be given that opportunity, and like I said, the people that I was able to do that with, not one of them, whether it was Ken Hitchcock or you know Kevin Deneen or Derek Laxdal, like all of them sat down and was like, gave me the time of day, and really kind of just told me everything they know. They were like, here you go, so that was just so valuable. And I've learned so much through that process, through being a part of the NHLCA female mentorship program, as well as all the opportunities that Hockey Canada has given me.
I read that another experience was you had interviewed for an assistant coaching job with the University of Vermont men's
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
when Todd Woodcroft was the head coach, and that part of that process included, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was effectively you had to break down tape and do a presentation on certain
Yeah.
aspects of the game. I'm wondering if A, you can maybe speak more to that experience, and B, um, how did that maybe inform how you went about building your own staff this year?
Yeah. So it was awesome. So grateful for that opportunity. Todd had me break down, I think it was his power play, but also um, how to create offense. So I looked at a bunch of his games and pulled some stuff apart and so forth and presented it to him. But I thought it was so cool and so rewarding. And then when I was with Peter Laviolette, he let me sit in. He was hiring an assistant coach at the time. So I got to sit in on a
No way.
number of candidates and see how they presented. And I was like, wow, on the women's side, no one's ever asked me to present, before. And really, like, I think obviously the knowledge part of the game is just so incredibly important. So that was something that I definitely did this time around with my assistant coaches too, because I wanted to see um, one, how they delivered messages, and two, what a great way to be able to assess the knowledge of their game. So um, I was super impressed with the two assistant coaches that I ended up hiring, and I feel so grateful that they're a part of this program because they're exceptional as well.
For any younger or aspiring coaches that are listening to this, and I think you just hit on something that's really important. It's, knowledge of the game is one thing, but presenting it and communicating it
Yeah.
is entirely different. Um, where might you recommend going to get those reps? And when you were going through that process, even with your current assistant coaches, what might be some feedback that you might give them to say, hey, when you're presenting to the players on the power play, try doing this, or what might be some
Yeah.
hacks?
Well, okay. One thing I will just say that is so important as a young coach: don't tell me what's going on. Like, because like especially if you're scouting. For example,
Yeah,
let's just use scouting. Like, look for tendencies. Don't tell me what's happening in the picture right then and there, because that picture probably isn't going to get recreated.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's one thing when maybe you're doing individual work with a student athlete or a player, and you could say, okay, this is what you did. What other options did you happen to have in that specific moment to get them to think? I think that's one thing. But when you're presenting on something, especially like scouting, um, look for tendencies. Don't tell me about what's happening in the picture, or
great advice.
if you are analyzing, um, let's just say someone's power play, and you start talking about whoever opponent they're playing, you're talking about their penalty kill, and it's like, no, 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 but that's not how you penalty kill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just tell me what the power play, what the tendency is, what they're trying to do, and how are we now going to prevent it? And now go back and show clips of us against that team before, if we had it, or a similar team, and how we prevented it. Like, what are they trying to do? So how do we prevent them from doing what they want them to do? Like, how are we going to control it? Does that make sense?
it does, and I love what you say, because I've always had I've said this to some people and they look at me sideways, but I always feel like using video, it's almost like going to trial, like you're trying to make a case for something that
Yes.
could happen, and you could prove it.
Yeah.
To your point, it's like you're proving that, hey, we got to stop this pass here because we've shown evidence that this is there's a high likelihood they're going to try and do this thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. So that would be my advice: is look more for tendencies, like in the scouting realm. And just with any kind of a point that you're trying to make, you know, I guess the more narrow you can make it, the better, you know?
yeah, that's a great point. Um, so speaking of presenting, so you and I got introduced, and I think this is sort of the tail of the tape. You did a presentation for us at a virtual event. We got a ton of great feedback from it, and then I reached out to you and said, "Hey, would you want to do this more often?" And then next thing you know, we had a logo for Laura
Yeah,
I can't, was it
finding
Laura
the
Schuler
details.
finding the details or finding the details with Laura Schuler?
Yeah.
But I went back and looked at some of them. Like they're so good. Like they are for
Yeah.
anybody that's like just go on the coach's site, Google Laura Schuler, they'll pop up, and they're excellent. So two questions. One, for coaches that are maybe at a point in their career where they're looking for that next opportunity, is there something to be said from keeping those coaching muscles flexed and sharp by finding opportunities to present, to jump out and practice
Yes.
with other teams, or just to keep your to kind of stay in the deep end?
100%. And keep watching, like I go to the coach's site all the time to watch different presentations. And I think that they're spectacular. Like there's so much that we can learn from each other. But when you're given the opportunity, definitely, I think it's so important to put yourself out there and, um, because obviously the more you do it, the better you get at it. Right. So,
Yeah.
so that's really important. And I think you also find, as the more that you do it, you find what you're actually really good at, and the
Yeah, that's
details
so
that you're
true,
really
right?
good at. So
Yeah.
if you don't ever do it, then you're never gonna find out, you know?
If we did a reboot, like we had, like, one time only reboot, Laura Schuler finding the details, what would you be inclined to present on, knowing what you've learned
Oh,
since then?
geez. Um,
What are you curious about right now in the game?
creating offense, creating more offense, and how to do it. Um, so that's probably the one thing I love watching NHL, and it's like even when you watch the highlights too, there are certain things that lead to goals, and you can tell that even when you're watching a game, like when a goal's going to score before they actually score, because they
Yeah,
they were
totally.
able to do X, Y, or Z. So I'm always trying to, like, when I watch NHL games, what when there are scoring opportunities, what happened to lead up to those opportunities? How did we create them?
Yeah. You know what? As you say that, like I'm going to the Canucks game tonight, and
Nice.
they're playing the Avalanche, and probably like you, I watch a lot of hockey. I'm sure there's examples of when I was a kid. There's not a player I can think of in my adult life who, when I go to the rink, I can't help it. I just fixate on them, and that's Quinn Hughes.
Yeah. Oh
Just so
gosh.
electric. And,
Good
today
player.
they're going to be playing Kale McCarr. But, as you just said that, the thing that occurred to me was that when I watch Quinn Hughes play, all I can think about is this player is a product of coaches who told him it was okay to make mistakes, because he does things that you're not supposed to do, or that certainly I would have been told that you
Yep.
know, a coach coming from, coaches that probably grew up where it was black and white. You never do this. You're only allowed to do this.
Yeah.
Versus the coach says, actually, you know what? Maybe try that and let's see what happens. And just
Yep.
and that's the end result of that mindset, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Two elite players that you get to go see tonight. That's for sure. Um, but yeah, I think it's so important. Like, um, ultimately, the other thing I think that is so important from a coaching perspective is, like, don't play the game for them. Don't try to play the game for them. Let them figure it out. And you have to be okay with letting them figure it out and try things. Like, I'm very structured, but at the same time, I want to be creative within the structure. For me, our structure just allows us to be more predictable, so that where your options are on the ice. Um, and then you become more of that multi-layered threat, not just a single entity out there. So your structure creates that for you. But ultimately, I'll never tell the puck carrier what to do with the puck. You know, you have to read and react and figure out what your options are. So I just think that's so important, because sometimes I still find myself doing that. Where it's like you want them to do something.
You
Um,
not find you have to fight against it as a coach?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, but ultimately, no. It's like, let go of the reins and give them the green light. to figure things out. And I feel like the more you do that, the more you believe in them. I mean, the game becomes so much more entertaining, even for you as a coach, as you're watching, these young developing minds and some of the things that they do out there. And you're just left on the bench going, what, did you see that? That was unreal. So, and so that's really cool as a coach I feel like when you can get to that there, you know what I mean? When you can get to that mentality, that
Does that
mindset.
take experience, do you think? Like a certain
I
level of
think so.
experience? Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Hence, I'm still fighting it.
What
So,
what
no.
what would be some examples in practice of you sort of establishing that balance between structure and the freedom to be creative? What are sort of the guardrails that you might set up to allow for both?
Yeah. For example, like say you're just doing a regular, I would say zone entry drill, um, and um, letting the puck carrier dictate what they're going to do, whether when they get over the blue line, they're going to find space and take advantage of the space in front of them and cut to the middle, or whether they're going to outside drive. Like so many coaches sometimes are like outside drive. You know what I mean? But it's so important that they figure that out. Um, I don't know if I explained that well enough, but
No,
uh,
as you say it, I cringe because there's probably a point where I was that coach where it was just like, we're gonna do a line rush drill, but the only way you're allowed to do it is this exact pattern, and this has to
yeah,
happen. And somebody
yeah, and
doesn't, you blow
even
it down, you start, and you're
yeah,
like, gosh, terrible way to
yeah,
approach it.
yeah. And even, I mean, there's certain things that, yes, are they not getting into their structure because of a lack of effort, or is it a lack of time? Because those two things are very, very different. Like if you're looking at a zone entry and it's like your first wave of your attack, and you have this triple drive, and you have your second wave of the attack coming in behind, or is it looking more like the old triangular attack type of structure? But meanwhile, like when you watch the NHL, it's not always that picture perfect. It's like you take what's being given, you know and that's what's so incredibly important, to allow your players to not get so uptight when they're taking what's being given to them, but you want to see it a certain way, you know? And I think that's really, really important, because, if you just keep doing things one way all the time, you become really, easy to defend then. That's for sure.
Well, then, as you said, then the other team's coaches are, when they're trying to find those
Tendencies.
predictors. Yeah, it
Yeah.
becomes pretty easy. I'd be curious to know. You talk about work ethic, and I know you really touched on that in your opening press conference. That that there was, I think I sensed it was a part of your coaching philosophy, but also is just such a blueprint of the Minnesota-Duluth program, was work ethic and sort of a bit of blue collar mindset. Oftentimes, I have found that really elite players, really elite offensive players, um, they they can get a lot done without sweating too hard in some cases, or at least they don't have
Yep.
that visual representation that you might see on film, that they're going all out. How do you
Yep.
balance evaluating if some players? I mean, it's really easy to tell that they're working their tail off. How
Yep.
do you sort of balance on how you
Yeah.
evaluate work ethic?
Yeah. To me, it's more off the puck what you're doing. So if you want to be a goal scorer, like where's your work ethic? Are you reloading high enough out of the zone so
Yeah,
you're now sneaking in undetected? Did you do that work off the puck so when you get it, your toe caps are down ice, and now you're in a way better position to be able to snipe. Um, or are you being lazy and getting to the same area that you're going to get to, but now everybody sees you because you were lazy, and now all of a sudden the puck comes to you and you have, there's a stick on you, so you can't get your shot off. So that work ethic is when you can show that to elite players, like once they buy into that 200-foot game, but like what they do off of the puck to be able to become undetected, then all of a sudden they start to create even more, you
yeah.
know, and the more you can reinforce that with video, you know, um, the more they're obviously going to buy into it and start to do it. But when you can show them too, somebody trying to get into that soft area of the ice, but they didn't work to get out of it first. I
Yeah.
call it leading, when you lead your check away and then jump into that soft area. Like, when you don't do that, someone's right on you.
Yeah.
you know so the work ethic piece is just so incredibly important. um, and I think some of the best players, though, like in the world, are the ones that work the hardest. you know but then you have those kids, like you were alluding to, that work so hard, and they have red faces, but they're not reading the play. They're just kind of kamikazing it and going all over the place, and that's a different type of teaching. Then you have to, you know, be able to break down and show them why their faces are red. you know, yeah. So there's definitely a balance, between that for sure.
For sure. Um, so you started playing college hockey, I believe, in 1989.
Oh God, yep.
Yeah, I don't want to get like, yeah, like neither you nor I want to get, yeah, there was attached dates, but I bring this up for this. I think you're somebody that has gone through, you played for Canada at the Olympics in '98, which was a big deal because it was the first time that there
Yep.
was women's hockey at the Olympics. I don't know how many NCAA women's programs there would have been in 1989, but I'm guessing it was probably half of maybe what there is today.
Yeah.
Um,
Not even
and
him.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you have witnessed these milestones. You've lived these milestones, in in your context in women's hockey, but I think just in women's sport. I mean, it's amazing what's happened over, I would just say, even the
Yeah.
last 2 to 3
Unbelievable.
years. So I guess with that being said, what's your take on where we're at with the women's game? Because I mean, gosh, if I'm one of your athletes, like the fact that I get to show up to practice today and think, man, if I do my best, I don't just get the opportunity to maybe win an NCAA championship and earn a degree. Like, man, I can go and earn a living playing the game,
Yeah.
which as a male, that's just you grew up and that was obvious, but
Right.
but now
Right.
it's universally obvious, which is awesome.
Yeah. It's so amazing how far the game has come. And I feel so fortunate to have been a part of the growth of the game, and seen so much growth within it, going from um, not having NCAA programs, to having them, to having scholarships, to having 18 full scholarships, and, XYZ and world tournaments and Olympics and all of that. And now to see it, become a professional sport and become a viable professional sport, like, just so amazing for these young women, to now have that opportunity to dream, and to want to play professionally. So it's just amazing. I so happy that I get to see it, during while I'm still here, you know. But it's just I know there's been so many women who have and men who have worked so hard to see this become a reality, and it's just incredible. I mean, it's a dream come true, so lucky.
How does it change coaching athletes at your level?
Yeah,
Because I could see on one hand, there's a bit more of a carrot to dangle, so that's
yeah,
helpful to
there
have
is.
in your back pocket. But on
Yep.
the other hand, there's a bit more at stake for each individual, and perhaps that they're going to hold their coaches a bit more accountable, specifically as it relates to their career and the opportunities that they get.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, before, you could never really say, it was more or less to vie for a national team program,
Yeah,
which was so important too. Um, but now, obviously, there's more women getting that opportunity to potentially go pro, and hopefully they continue to add some teams, and going pro becomes a reality for even more young women. But yeah, you can definitely hold that. You can dangle that carrot for sure, and maybe you get even more buy-in.
yeah,
Because now it's like, all right, when someone's got to, you want them to do X, Y, or Z, like, be like, hey, like, if you don't, you
yeah.
know, then that might not come to fruition for you. So it's so important. Like, you got to buy into this part of the game. Like, this part of the game has to be better. And so I do think that you see more buy-in that way. But at the same time, yeah, there is more pressure on us too to help develop them and get them to where they need to be. And we take a ton of pride in that, in their development, and seeing them, seeing and being a part of helping their dreams come to become a reality. So that's something that, each and every day, I want to be the best I can be to help
Yeah.
them be the best that they can be, for sure.
How does that show up? Because again, you mentioned Maura Crowell, like, like her commitment to culture, and I know you've referenced that Shannon Miller was very much outside the box, and I know, like, Shannon's presented for us in the past, and you know, the lesson I took away from her was sort of indirect, but it was always like she just sort of seemed to have this appreciation that if everybody else is zigging, that maybe try zagging, and,
Try something different.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
maybe just that in itself, and she just seemed to understand that in itself could be a really effective strategy. But when when you look at your imprint on the DNA of the Minnesota Duluth program, um, what do you aspire for that to be?
I think to continue to cultivate, players who aren't afraid to work hard, um, and to be creative out there on the ice, and ultimately to have fun. And again, to continue to know that the only way that we get better is through mistakes. So let's embrace that. And when someone falls, let's pick each other up, because there's nothing better than that. Knowing that you have your buddy beside you, who's there for you, no matter what. So that's kind of the legacy that I hope to leave here, because I think that's one, that helps to build that growth mindset, where players are going to continue to learn and develop and keep getting better and better.
When you say that, you aspire for people or your athletes um, to want to work hard, and I'm paraphrasing here, or to work hard, is that a way of saying that, when players are afraid to make mistakes, that one of the results is they may pull back or hold back
Yeah.
on their work
Yes.
ethic and giving it their all?
Yes. 100%. When you are afraid to make mistakes, you're not going to play with confidence. I mean, you're going to hold back. You're going to, yeah, for sure. Not try things. So how are you going to possibly know what you're capable of if you're not, you know, getting the green light to try different things? So, so that's so important.
Love that. Love that. As we close here, Laura, I'd be curious to know. I mean, you've had as diverse a coaching journey as I can think of. Just, you've coached your country's national team in the Olympics. You've been the head coach at 3 college programs. You've won national championships. You've attended NHL camps, etc. Um, when you look back on that arc of your coaching journey, what is different about this version of Laura Schuler, the head
Yeah,
coach, versus maybe past versions?
a lot. I mean, with every experience that you have, you meet so many amazing people, and you learn so many different things from people. And I think that's so important. Like, I'm so grateful for the path that I was able to, um, journey along, and meet
Yeah.
so many different people, and learn from so many different amazing people. Um, I think probably the biggest lesson that I've learned, and I think I've already alluded to it, but just the importance of allowing your athletes to play free is so incredibly important. And cultivating those relationships with them, making sure that you're spending time with them, investing in them. When they know that you've watched all of their shifts, and you're giving them feedback, and that there's a time component to that, and how much you're
Yeah.
you're doing to help them be at their best. I know that that goes such a long way. So the relationship part is so incredibly important. And the last thing I would say is just, meeting your players with where they're at, and bringing them up from there, which is so important. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned.
Well, I want to close on this. I want to talk about the relationship you have with yourself as a coach, because every story you have told in the last hour, you have told from the glass half full perspective, and the word gratitude keeps coming up. How
Yeah,
have you learned? Because I if you're blessed with that as a human being, that's amazing. But I think gratitude is something that you've got to practice. um, how have you learned to look at things and be so positive, and look at your experiences from a glass half full perspective?
because well, thank you for saying that. But I mean, there's so much to learn out there, you know?
Yeah,
And for me, I just get excited. I love the game so much. I love it. I love it.
clearly, yeah.
Yeah, and just, the more opportunities I get to be able to learn from people, I just feel so blessed, so grateful, you know? So I hope that, opportunities still continue to come, my way, and, but the other thing that I'm taking a ton of pride is just passing on what I do know, you know? And I s people know within the hockey community, anybody can call me, I am way more than willing to talk to hockey, to anyone. And I think that's so important because people spent the time with me, and I want to be able to do that, with other people. So um, that's really important. And thank you for the opportunity with the coaches site, and to be able to do finding the details and to share that with a lot of people across the hockey community has been like so incredibly valuable for me, and I feel so grateful to have been given that opportunity. So thank you so much for allowing me that opportunity.
Well, I'll just add to that. Like, when you say that, when people reach out to you, respond. Like, when you were doing finding the details, I've got, and it still comes up where people will say, "Hey, like, I watched one of these videos. I reached out to Laura. She got back to me. We jumped on a Zoom call. I got to ask her questions." Like, it's not lip service. I think like, I've never had one story where it's like I reached out to Laura and I never heard anything. Like, it's
Yeah,
genuine. So, um, listen, it's been so good to catch up, and congratulations on this new opportunity. And I know that you've got a team with a ton of potential on your hands. So best of luck in the second
thank
half.
you. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It's been fun.